let's have a look at this shamatha practice of focusing at the abdomen in a little bit more detail before we go back to the practice. And for this, again, I'd like to read a little bit from this book, Attention Revolution by Alan Wallace, and see what he says about this practice. It's on page 31. He says, begin this session as you did before by settling your body into its rest state, imbued with the three qualities of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. So remember, vigilance is simply to keep the back straight. With your awareness permeating the tactile sensations throughout your body, take 3 slow, deep breaths, observing the sensations of the breath filling your torso from the belly up to the chest. Then let your respiration return to its natural rhythm and simply be present with the breath for several minutes, breathing as effortlessly as you can. So again here, he's bringing in this taking 3 deep breaths at the beginning of our meditation session as an exercise to settle the chit-chat, particularly any negative state of mind. So again, if you find at the beginning of your meditation session your mind is very agitated, particularly in a negative state, it might be good to start with a little breathing exercise, like taking these 3 slow, deep breaths to let go of that negativity. And also it can very much help to settle the body as well, to relax the body. With this preparation, you establish a basis in relaxation. Without losing this sense of ease, now shift your emphasis to cultivation of attentional stability. This is the ability to sustain the focus of your attention without becoming fragmented or derailed by the force of distracting thoughts and sensations. With this aim, instead of being mindful of various sensations of breathing throughout your whole body, focus your attention just on the sensations of the expansion and contraction of your abdomen with each in and out breath. As you did before, note the duration of each inhalation and exhalation, observe the duration of the pauses between breaths. Out of sheer habit, unintentional thoughts are bound to cascade through your mind like a waterfall. One way of stemming this relentless stream of ideation is to count the breaths. Try that now by counting 1 at the beginning of your first inhalation, then attending closely to the sensations of the respiration throughout the rest of the inhalation and entire exhalation. Count 2 at the beginning of the next breath, and continue in this way for as long as you find it helpful. Let these mental counts be brief so that your attention to the counting doesn't override your awareness of the breath itself. The objective of counting the breath is to insert brief reminders into the practice, remembering to remember, so that you don't get carried away by distracting thoughts. Attending to these mental markers at regular intervals in the course of the respiration is like taking note of milestones on the side of a country road, letting you know by their presence that you are on the right track, or by their absence you have wandered off your chosen route. In this meditation, we're going to, partway through, we're going to introduce a little bit of counting the breath. And this can be helpful in the beginning stages of this shamatha practice. Particularly if we find that when we're trying to focus on the breath, we're just constantly swept away all the time. Then counting the breath can help us to remain focused, because if we occupy our mind with counting the breath, which is related to our practice, there's not much more space there then for thoughts to take you away. So we're going to introduce counting the breath and see if it's helpful. And what we're going to do, a little bit different to what is recommended here, is we're going to count at the end of the in-breath. So at the end of the in-breath, you mentally note 1. Then you focus on the sensations during the following out-breath and the following in-breath. At the end of the next in-breath, mentally note 2. And this way we'll count from 1 up to 10. And when we get to 10, we go back to 1. And if at any time you lose your count, you forget where you're up to, you simply go back to 1. But as he mentioned, still the main object we're focusing on is the sensations of the breath. We're not now just doing mindfulness of counting. We're just adding that a little bit at the end of every in-breath to help us to stay focused. So we're going to see if that's helpful for us or not. Some people find this very helpful, other people find it not so helpful, and even some people find it even another distraction. But we'll experiment with a little bit to see if it helps us. One more thing before we start. He says the following. Meditation is a balancing act between attention and relaxation. Mastering this requires working to counter the natural reflex of trying harder or clamping down when you see that your mind has become distracted. Instead, as soon as you see that your mind has wandered, release the effort of clinging to the distracting thought or physical sensation, return to the breath, and relax more deeply. Remember that the main point of such attentional training is not to stop thoughts from arising. Rather, it is first to relax the body and mind, then to cultivate the stability of sustaining attention continuously upon your chosen object. Thoughts are bound to arise. Simply do your best not to be carried away by them. And then one last point, and then we'll do the meditation. The kind of awareness cultivated here is called bare attention, in which the mind is fully focused on the sensory impressions appearing to it moment to moment, rather than getting caught up in conceptual and emotional responses to those stimuli. As you attend to the abdominal sensations of breathing, mental images of your body based on visual memory are likely to arise together with the bodily sensations themselves. Recognize the difference between the tactile sensations of the breath as they appear to bear attention, as opposed to the mental images of what you think your body looks like, which are superimposed by your conceptual mind. As soon as you note the presence of these mental images, release them and direct your attention solely to the immediate tactile experiences of breathing. So again, in this practice, we are focusing on the sensations of the rising and lowering of the abdomen directly. We're not imagining or visualizing the abdomen rising and falling. We're just focusing on the sensations directly in this area. Okay? Clear? Any questions about anything there? The counting? Everything clear? Okay, let's do the practice and then some more comments. So again, 20-minute meditation. Settling the body into a state of relaxation, stillness, and vigilance. Using the out-breath to relax and release any tightness or tension. the breathing to settle into its natural rhythm. And setting the mind in a state of ease and relaxation. Simply allowing the mind to come to rest in the present moment. Focusing on the sensations of the breath throughout the body. Now narrow your focus and focus on the sensations of the breath at the area of the abdomen. Focusing with bare attention on the sensations of the rising and lowering of the abdomen as you breathe. help balance the mind. We can use each out-breath as an opportunity to relax and release any agitation, tension or distraction. And we can use each in-breath as an opportunity to arouse and refresh our focus, sharpening our focus. help overcome distraction, we'll now introduce counting the breath. So remember, for this, at the end of the in-breath, we mentally note 1. And then we focus on the sensations of the breath through the following out-breath and then following in-breath. And then at the end of the next in-breath, we mentally note 2. And this way we can count from 1 up to 10 and then go back to 1 again. If at any time you lose the count, simply go back to 1. So let's now experiment with counting the breath to see if it helps to stabilize our attention. Any questions or comments?
Was difficult not to count with the breathing. Like it was 1, 2, all the time. And if I try to just count when I stop, when I finish, I was too worried that I would forget the numbers. So it was confusing, so it was agitating. So I decided not to count at all. And just
Good point. What we can do is, there are many variations on this counting. One thing we can do, if that's your experience, is count more often. So you count 1 at the in-breath, 2 at the out-breath, 3 at the in-breath. So more counting than just 1 for a whole thing. Or the alternative, sometimes people find that it's too much counting, then you do less. You like do every second breath you count 1, or every third breath. So you can do more or less according to what sort of works for you. But some people find that counting is just another distraction and it doesn't help, so then we can leave it out. So this is not necessary. Another variation on counting, and that we sometimes find in other Buddhist traditions, is instead of counting the breath, they do noting the breath. So instead of counting, they note breathing in, breathing out, or just simply in, out, in, out. So this is also okay. What we don't want to do is do that too much, so that's all we're focusing on. You know, we don't want to turn it into a commentary. Still the main focus is the sensations of the breath, and the counting or noting is a little bit something on the side to keep us focused. Again, if you don't find counting and noting helpful, you can just leave it out altogether. It's not necessary. And if you find it helpful, what I'd recommend is don't use it all the time. Only bring it in when you need to. If you're focusing not too bad, don't need it. If you find that you're constantly all the time distracted, then you can bring it in, and bring it in for a little while until the mind calms down and stabilizes a bit more. Then let go of the counting or noting and just stay with the breath. So you can bring it in when you need, and don't overuse it. Of course, as we go deeper into the practice, we'll need to let go of counting and noting altogether, because it is still conceptual activity. But it may be useful in the beginning stages to help us to stay on track. So again, just experiment with it, and if it's helpful, bring it in when you need it. Not helpful, you can leave it out altogether. Down the back.
How will we open the option? If it's
How do we, so I didn't catch what you said.
how will we open the option?
Open the what? Abdomen.
Abdomen.
How to open it?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
And release.
Hmm?
Release.
To, you mean if there's tension? Or
How to open?
I'm not sure what your question, I'm not sure what you're asking. What do you mean?
How to open the abdomen?
How to open
Release
it?
If it's stuck.
Stuck in tension?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah. So again, then I would recommend go back to the full body, and just on every out breath, just emphasize relax, relax, relax. So that's what I would recommend. Also, something that I'm going to talk a bit later today is that if we're even doing the full body practice and we still find a lot of tension in any part of the body, then what can be, and we can't release it, what can be helpful is, instead of sitting upright, lie down to meditate on your back in what's called the Shavasana posture in yoga. Use that. That's going to help to release tension in the body. So you can use this. So if you're the sort of person who's really tight and tense normally, and you can't release the tension in the body, you can't release the tension in the mind, use the Shavasana posture to meditate. Then that's really going to be very helpful to relax the body. So try that. Of course, at home, there's not really any space here to do that. I would recommend is if that it's helpful and you find success, that's great, because then you sort of get inspired to go further. So I wouldn't be sort of trying to say, well, okay, next session I have to get rid of it altogether. I would sort of slowly do it. So maybe use it for some while, and then just sort of test the water a little bit and just say, okay, for the next 2 minutes I'm going to not count, and see how that goes. So just sort of slowly sort of wean yourself off it, and that, I think, and then bring it in if you need it. So don't do sort of like dramatic stop, you know, you're only counting and then you don't count. That's probably too much of a change. So just slowly, little periods of letting go, and then slowly, and this could take weeks or months or longer to go through that process. So don't be in any hurry to let go of it if you find it very helpful.
Counting did help me to avoid distractions, but then I feel that my mind concentrating on the breath, this is a distraction.
Your mind is focusing on the counting, you mean?
You know, on the breath.
Well, that's what we're supposed to be focusing on, no?
Yeah.
Right.
And
so
I find this is distraction for itself. The goal is to achieve some emptiness
no,
in the mind.
no,
So what does it bring then?
no. So we have to be very clear about the goal of each practice that we're doing. The goal of shamatha practice is to develop single-pointed concentration. That's the goal of shamatha. The goal of vipassana practice is to realize the nature of reality. And in that experience of the nature of reality, if we're talking what's called emptiness, then that is a very spacious experience of non-dualistic experience. So we have to be very clear why we're doing a practice and not mix things together. Because if we're mixing things together, then it doesn't really work. So when we sit down and we say, okay, I'm going to do now a shamatha practice, then the goal of this practice is simply to improve our attention skills, to strengthen mindfulness, to develop this single-pointed concentration, and then we pick the object that works for us and we just do that practice. We don't then sort of bring in other things from other practices, because then we're mixing it together. So I think that's what you were sort of indicating, is that the goal, I mean the long-term goal, of course, is to realize reality, but we're not doing that yet. We're preparing ourselves for that practice. So the shamatha practice is the basis for that practice. So here, we're not doing any of that stuff. We're doing the developing our attention skills, that's it.
The idea is to practice concentration. What is the difference between what you say and my looking at this white chair, open eyes with light, no mantra, no singing, nothing, no Buddhism. Be able to sit, concentrate on the chair. Probably my mind will distract, so I will bring it back. And so this is the chair. Like I do in work, like everybody of us know the concept.
Sure.
This experience is nothing new.
Right. And exactly. I mean, this is what I mentioned. I think there was a question about before the TM, the reciting a mantra.
No, mantra is different.
Yeah, okay. But here, of course, if we can start there. We can sit there and just look at the chair and just focus on the chair. As thought comes, come back to the chair. Yes, absolutely.
It's all right.
Absolutely. But what you will find is that because it's a sensory object, you'll only be able to improve your attention skills to a certain point, and then you won't be able to go further. So then, if you want to go further than that, you'll need to move to a more subtle object, a mental object, to go further. You'll find that using the visual object can help, particularly if we are very distracted, but it'll only take us so far. And what we want to do is go a lot further than that. So yes, start with that, and when you find that your attention skill is improved, and it probably will, but then you'll find at some point you'll sort of be there and you won't be able to go any further. Then that would be the time to move to a mental object to go further.
But breathing is not more abstract than a chair.
More abstract.
Yes, you say move on from something concrete to something more abstract. So I say
Not abstract, subtle. So what you're, yeah. The breathing that we're focusing on now is probably quite coarse, yes. But what you'll find is that as you go focus on that, your breathing will become more subtle, which will force you to pay closer and closer attention. We don't have that with a chair. If you're looking at a chair.
My breath in reality will be more subtle, or my conception of the breathing, because if it's only my conception,
The breathing. And
per se.
the breathing, you'll find that if you're focusing on the breathing, that the breathing will get more and more subtle. So it's like you're hardly breathing. And to focus on that, at the abdomen or nostrils, you really have to pay very close attention, more attention. So actually that's another advantage of the breath, is it's like there's what's called a biofeedback loop, which you don't have with a chair. There's no biofeedback loop. It's just a visual object.
So you mean that the breathing per se will be, if there was something objective measuring my breathing, you will see that my measuring is becoming lower and lower and slower and more subtle.
Yeah, so because your object, your breathing is getting more subtle, your mind will go further. Whereas that's not getting more subtle.
No.
Right.
No, I can concentrate in one piece and
Sure.
relate.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Why is it that in certain practices in Buddhism, they recommend to concentrate on the breath from the nostrils and not from the abdomen? Let's say in jhanas, like
Right.
until I...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, as I mentioned here, the full body practice is particularly helpful for relaxation. That's a good thing. The abdomen is very good for stability because it's easier to focus here. Often what people find is that if they focus here, they don't notice anything and then they're just completely distracted. Whereas here it's easier to focus. So that's particularly good for stabilizing. But then to really develop the clarity, as we mentioned here, we need more subtle object. This will get more subtle, but this already is much more subtle, and so it's going to be even better than the abdomen to become more subtle. But the challenge is that, and with any one of those, we can go a long way, but this, of course, is a much smaller object than here, so therefore, because of that, it's more naturally easier to develop the clarity here. But then there's a potential problem here, is that because it's so subtle, as a beginner, we do this. Because we can't pick it up, so we tense. Where we don't probably do it so much with this. So even though this has that benefit, there's also potential problem that we tense when we do this. And so then we as an individual can see where we're at and see what sort of works for us in the beginning, and then we can like maybe start here, and then after some time we can move to here, or we can simply stay there.
So why not the mind, which is so subtle, and I feel that with the mind I feel awareness immediately.
Great, and and I'm going to talk more about this later, and I briefly mentioned the recommendation is use the object that works best for you. Some people will find the breath the best. Some people find that the breath either boring or they don't like, or it doesn't work. They find the mind better. Some others find resting in awareness the best. Some people find a mental image is the best. Many different people have different experiences. So the thing to do is to check them, and then see the one that really works best for you, and then just stay with that.
Yeah, but it seems that in the jhanas they stick to only the nostrils. I don't know why.
I don't know.
I don't.
Find that when I'm making an effort to concentrate on the stomach, and the chest is taking my attention.
Your chest, yeah.
The lower chest here.
Right.